The police were called on me for sitting in a hospital lobby with a guitar case at my feet. I was threatened with arrest before anyone even asked my name. And the only thing I had done wrong was exist in the wrong skin in the wrong place holding the wrong object. Yeah, that happened. It was a Thursday afternoon at Memorial Hospital, the kind of day that feels ordinary enough to forget. The lobby was busy but calm, phones ringing softly at the front desk, nurses in scrubs moving with that quick, efficient walk, families scattered in chairs pretending not to worry. I had been sitting there about 25 minutes waiting for my wife Angela to finish her cardiology appointment upstairs. I had my guitar with me because I had just picked it up from a luthier who'd spent 3 weeks restoring my vintage 1968 Martin D28. That guitar is worth around $12,000 now, polished to a warm amber glow, the kind of instrument that makes other musicians stop mid-sentence. I wasn't about to leave it in my car in a hospital parking lot. So I sat there in dark jeans and a button-down shirt, scrolling through emails, answering a text from a producer about a session next week, just killing time like anyone else in that lobby. I remember glancing up and noticing the security guard watching me. His name was Michael Brennan. Mid-40s, stiff posture, radio clipped to his belt, the kind of guy who takes his job very seriously. He stood near a column about 15 feet away, just staring. At first I figured, hey, security guards watch people, that's the job. But he didn't move. Didn't look at anyone else. Just me. I adjusted the guitar case so it wasn't blocking the aisle, gave him a polite nod. He didn't nod back. He walked off toward the security office. I went back to my phone. 7 minutes later, the front doors opened and 2 uniformed police officers walked in with purpose. That's when my stomach dropped. You know that feeling when something isn't right before anyone says a word? They came straight toward me. One of them, Officer Doyle, stopped in front of my chair and said loud enough for half the lobby to hear, "Sir, open the case right now. No hello, no explanation, just a command." I looked up slowly. "Excuse me?" The other officer, Rollins, stepped closer, hand hovering near his weapon. "We received a report of a suspicious individual with a possible weapon." "Open the case." Suspicious individual. Possible weapon. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "It's a guitar," I said. "I'm waiting for my wife. She has an appointment upstairs." Doyle's tone sharpened. "Sir, open it now or you'll be arrested for obstruction." That word hit me. Arrested. For sitting. For holding a guitar case. For being there. I could feel every pair of eyes in the lobby shift toward us. And in that moment, the truth settled over me like a weight I've carried before but never get used to. This wasn't about behavior. I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't paced, hadn't done anything except sit and scroll on my phone. This was about how I looked sitting there with something big enough to make someone uncomfortable. I bent down, unlatched the case, and opened it. The lid lifted to reveal the Martin D28 in all its restored glory. Polished wood, fresh strings, craftsmanship that any musician would recognize instantly. Rollins' hand dropped away from his weapon. Doyle's expression barely changed. I looked up at them. "It's a guitar," like I said. Behind them, Brennan stepped forward. No apology. No embarrassment. "I was just doing my job," he said. "You look suspicious." I stared at him. "Suspicious? How?" He crossed his arms. "You were sitting here a long time. I didn't recognize you." That sentence hung in the air. I didn't recognize you. As if a hospital lobby requires membership. As if existing without being known is reason enough to dial 911. Something inside me shifted. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "I want your names and badge numbers." I said, my voice steady but tight. "Every one of you." Brennan's tone turned defensive. "Security protocols require me to report anything suspicious." "What exactly did I do?" I asked again. He hesitated, and that hesitation told the whole story. "You were just sitting there," he repeated weakly. That's when people around us started speaking up. An older white woman a few chairs down said, "I've been here longer than he has. Nobody called the police on me." A young guy near the entrance lifted his backpack. "Nobody asked to search this." A middle-aged black woman stood up and said plainly, "This is profiling." You could feel the mood in the room shift. Brennan's face flushed. "I treat everyone the same." I stepped closer, holding my phone steady. "If you treat everyone the same, why didn't you ask me what was in the case before calling 911? He didn't answer. He couldn't. That's when the elevator doors opened and Angela walked out. She saw the officers, saw the crowd, saw me standing there with my phone raised, and her expression changed in 2 seconds flat. "Victor, what's going on?" I turned to her. "They called the police on me for sitting here with my guitar." Her eyes snapped to Brennan. "You did what?" He tried the same line. "Ma'am, I was concerned about public safety." Angela laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was unbelievable. "My husband is a professional musician. He's played on Grammy-nominated albums. That guitar is worth $12,000, and you thought he was a threat." She pulled up my website on her phone and held it up. Photos from studios, album credits, names people would recognize. Doyle and Rollins exchanged a look. The power dynamic in that lobby shifted right there. I spoke again, calm but firm. "I want the security footage from this lobby. I want the 911 call recording. And I want to file a formal complaint." A hospital supervisor, Karen Mitchell, had come over by then. She looked shaken. "Sir, I'm so sorry. This shouldn't have happened." I shook my head. "We're not doing this privately. We talk right here." Angela stepped aside and made a call. "Marcus, it's Angela. We need you at Memorial Hospital right now. Marcus Reed is our attorney. Civil rights cases." He arrived within 30 minutes, and once he started asking for documentation, the hospital's confidence faded fast. Over the next few days, we learned something that turned this from a bad afternoon into something much bigger. Brennan had 3 prior formal complaints in his personnel file, all from black visitors. One was a doctor who had been followed and asked to prove he worked in medicine. Another was a woman visiting her mother in ICU who had been questioned about why she was there. The third was a man waiting for his son's physical therapy session who had been watched for 15 minutes before being confronted. All documented, all dismissed with verbal warnings. That's when Marcus leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "This isn't an incident. This is a pattern, and patterns cost money." We filed a federal lawsuit, racial discrimination, violation of civil rights, emotional distress. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed me sitting peacefully for 25 minutes. The 911 call captured Brennan describing me as a suspicious black male with a large case that could contain a weapon with no threatening behavior mentioned because there wasn't any. The hospital knew his history and kept him in that position anyway. 8 months later, Memorial Hospital settled for $920,000. Brennan was terminated. Mandatory bias training was implemented for all security staff. An independent review process was established. Clear written protocols now require documented threatening behavior before police can be called. The police department updated its own training too, requiring officers to independently assess suspicious person calls rather than escalating immediately. The settlement was public, the reforms were mandatory, and Brennan's appeal was denied. He's no longer working hospital security. I didn't celebrate the way people think you do when you win a case like that. There's no parade for being treated like a suspect for sitting in a chair. But there was something powerful about accountability. We used part of the settlement to start a music education fund for kids in underserved communities. Instruments lessons, access to studios. Because if someone's going to look at a guitar case and see danger, I want more kids walking around with guitar cases. 5 years later, that hospital hasn't had another racial profiling complaint tied to security. The footage of me sitting calmly while officers approached is now used in training sessions about implicit bias. The 911 audio is played in workshops as an example of how assumptions can spiral into civil rights violations. I still play that Martin D28. Every time I open that case, I think about that day. Wood and strings mistaken for a weapon. A peaceful afternoon turned into a standoff because someone couldn't imagine a black man with a guitar just waiting for his wife. Here's the part that still sits with me, though. The officers weren't disciplined. The department said they were responding to a call, following procedure. And maybe that's true. But when does procedure stop being an excuse and start being part of the problem? If one biased call can trigger armed officers threatening arrest, isn't that something bigger than one security guard? I'm not angry anymore, but I haven't forgotten. And I know this kind of thing happens every day to people who don't have an attorney on speed dial, who don't have documentation, who don't have a platform. So I want to hear from you. If you had been sitting in that lobby watching it unfold, would you have spoken up like those strangers did? Do you think the settlement was justice or just money? Should the officers have faced consequences too? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this story if you believe people should be able to exist in public spaces without being treated like a threat. And tell me, have you ever been judged for simply being somewhere you had every right to be? Let's talk about it.